Hello, it is early September 2023 and I'm in Glacier National Park for what's planned to be an 8-day backpacking adventure. This is my second trip in Glacier, and as I explore the Park Creek, Coal Creek, and Nyack Creek drainages, I expect this to be a much different trip than my first one. I'm anticipating deep woods, remote wilderness, and not a lot of people. I'm getting started off along the South Shore Trail from 2 Medicine. I've got about 6 miles to go today to reach Cobalt Lake, and I'm hitting the trail. Astor Falls, a short detour off the South Shore Trail. It is a mostly sunny day today. Really beautiful weather to start the trip off. A little windy, but I'm in the trees now. Crossing a swinging bridge. Yeah, these things sway. The wind's kind of calm right now. Good news for me. I just finished up my stretch of the South Shore Trail. I'm now on the 2 Medicine Pass Trail, which should take me right up to Cobalt Lake. Right off the trail is Rockwell Falls, and there's an upper portion hidden behind those little trees. The climb has started to steepen up right after Rockwell Falls as I make my way towards Cobalt Lake. I'm closing in on camp, which is good because my heavy pack is starting to weigh on me. First look at Cobalt Lake. It's a beauty. A few clouds have moved in here in the afternoon, no big deal. And I believe that somewhere up there to the right is 2 Medicine Pass. We might not be able to see it from here. Home sweet home. The Cobalt Lake Campground food prep area. Looks like I was beat to camp today. I'm gonna hang my food and find my tent spot. Home sweet home. There's only 2 campsites here at Cobalt Lake, and they're both very private, which is nice.
Cobalt Lake was named by topographer R.T. Evans, who created early maps of the park due to the spectacular blue color of its waters.
The tent's pitched. It is a very rocky campsite, so it's tough to get the stakes all the way in. Combined with the wind, could be a recipe for disaster, but I hope I'm in there good enough to get me through the night.
On this trip, I'm using the Glacier and Waterton Lakes Nat Geo map number 215.
Let's take a look at the map for day 1. Starting from the 2 Medicine campground, I hiked around 2 Medicine Lake to connect with the 2 Medicine Pass Trail, which brought me up to Cobalt Lake. Day 1 was about 6 miles. Day 1 has been a good solid start to my backpacking trip in Glacier. The hike in wasn't too difficult, and I had a couple bonus waterfalls on the way towards beautiful Cobalt Lake. The wind has been roaring and is forecast to get even worse tomorrow when I climb my pass. We'll hope for the best. Camp set up, dinner's in me, and I'm gonna settle in for a relaxing evening, as long as that wind doesn't blow too hard. And that'll be the end of day 1. Good night. Good morning. Made it day 2 of my backpacking Glacier. Comfortable night last night. The temperature stayed in the mid-50s and the wind roared all around, but didn't cause too many problems inside my tent. Where the wind may cause problems, or it certainly will cause problems, is on my hike up and over to Medicine Pass today. Today is looking very similar to day number 2 of my last trip in Glacier, where I had to do a big pass in the horrendous winds. So I've been through it before recently, and I'm not looking forward to it again, but hopefully I'll be able to make it through. I'm gonna change clothes, get camp packed up, and it'll be time to hit the trail. A good view back of the way that I hiked up yesterday. This looks like a pass, but it's just a baby pass on the side of Mount Rockwell. To Medicine is a lot more of a climb ahead of me. Good start to the day. Mostly cloudy. The winds are picking up. My first view out in the Walton area. Cobalt. I'm getting some really incredible views up here. Found a nice little not too windy spot as well. That's looking back at Two Medicine Lake the way I came up. Pretty soon I'll be mostly looking out to the other side into Walton. Right on cue, looking out into the Walton area. This is where I'll be exploring over the next week. Last view into Two Medicine for a week till I loop back around. We've got the King of Carnes here. And it looks like the trail's about to drop down, so maybe this is kind of the high point of Two Medicine Pass, and therefore I'm crossing over the Continental Divide. That's got to be Lake Izzy up there. I'm gonna drop down into the bottom of this valley and then climb back up to the lake. That'll be my day. I'm descending into the Park Creek drainage, which looks like a land of deep valleys and towering spires. A couple hundred feet of descent left to reach the bottom of the valley here, and I will say that the winds, while they were present on Two Medicine Pass, were not near as bad as I'd feared. It was much, much worse last week on Red Gap Pass, so I'm thankful for that. Stopped for lunch at the Upper Park Creek cabin. I'll be back to this exact same spot tomorrow to follow the Park Creek Trail into the Park Creek drainage, but for today I'm going to head a little under 2.5 miles and about 1,000 feet of elevation gain up to Lake Isabel. Camp for the night. On the left, Lake Isabel is flanked by Vigil Peak, and on the right by Caper Peak and Mount Rockwell. I should be able to stay dry on these rocks. Made it across the outlet, no problem, to arrive at the shimmering shores of beautiful Miss Isabel. Home sweet home. Made it to Lake Isabel campground. We see the food prep area to the left. Then out here to the right is the food hang. And I am the first person to make it to camp today. There are 2 tent sites here at Izzy. I'm picking this one because it's a little more sheltered. The other site actually has a better view of the lake, but I can always walk 10 feet to get a view of the lake. I can't make my tent more sheltered in a non-sheltered spot.
Isabel was the wife of guide and mountaineer Thomas Dawson, as well as the daughter of Montana historical figure Malcolm Clark.
All set up. Nice and cozy. Let's take a look at the map for day 2. Starting from my camp on Cobalt Lake, I came up and over Two Medicine Pass, down to the Park Creek Trail, and then up the Lake Isabel Trail to Lake Isabel. Day 2 was about 8 miles. Day 2 has been a great day. My biggest worry, the winds coming over Two Medicine Pass, weren't a huge deal, and the hiking along the pass was perhaps the most scenic of anywhere that I've been in Glacier. Once I made it across, I entered the cusp of the Walton area, which has captured my imagination due to its reputation as the most remote and wild section of Glacier. I've got camp set up, dinner's in me, and I'm settling in for a relaxing evening. That'll be the end of day 2. Good night. Good morning. Made it to day 3 in Glacier. Calm, comfortable night last night. Couple degrees chillier than the night before, but still north of 50. Very balmy for this time of year. The big threat of today is the rain. This is the highest chance of rain on the trip, and it certainly looks like it's going to be coming in. The good news is that the wind, which was ferocious and omnipresent for the first 2 days, has cleared out, and it is perfectly still and peaceful at this point in time. I've got about 10 miles to go today. It should not be a difficult day of hiking, more downhill than uphill. It's really just going to depend on how much rain ends up coming in. I've got breakfast in me. I'm going to get camp packed up and be time to hit the trail. The first 2.5 miles of my day today will be retracing my steps back down to the upper Park Creek cabin. Wow, the Lake Isabel Basin has gotten completely enveloped in fog. I got out of there just in time this morning. But I do see some blue sky poking out. Ooh. The mountain tops are completely covered with clouds. However, I'm getting really lucky so far and no precipitation is falling. In fact, the only wetness I'm experiencing is from all the vegetation along the trail, which is definitely getting my shorts, legs, and boots wet. But that's better than the whole body, so I'll take it. And I do see some more blue patches. I'm now breaking into new ground, past the upper Park Creek cabin, heading towards the Park Creek cabin, farther down Park Creek. Now this looks to me like a bear track. I see 5 claws. Out to the west of Park Creek, we have the shrouded tops of Vigil Peak to the right and Statuary Peak to the left. Popped out of the brushy woods into a wide open view. Park Creek is down in the valley below. It continues to look like an intimidating day weather-wise. It always seemed like a matter of time, and sure enough, the rain has started to come down. It's not the falling rain that creates the big annoyance for me, it's the fact that now all this vegetation is wet again, and I have to brush through it. Even if it stops raining soon, all the vegetation for the rest of the day will probably be wet. So it's turned into a wet day, but I believe I only have a couple miles left, and then I'll be at camp. I don't know where those little patches of blue from this morning went to, but they're not around here anymore. Lower Park Creek cabin. I'm going to sit on that sizable front porch, wait out the rain, eat a late lunch, and after that go find the campground, which should be right in this same general area. Home sweet home. Park Creek, aka Lower Park Creek Campground, just a couple 100 yards below the cabin. I'm going to hang my food, get set up, and get some dry clothes on. This will be my tent site. Time to get pitched.
The Walton area was named after Isaac Walton, famous British author of The Complete Angler.
Basically, as soon as I finished pitching, the rain came back, and I was trapped in my tent for a while. But there's a lull in the storm, which means that it is dinner time. Let's take a look at the map for day 3. From camp on Lake Isabel, I retraced my steps down to the Park Creek Trail and followed that along Park Creek all the way to the Park Creek campsite. Day 3 was about 10 miles. Day 3 in Glacier has been a good day. I enjoyed the hiking through pretty forests with some scenic mountain views sprinkled in, and the fog and clouds made for some dramatic scenery. But I will say that hiking in Glacier in the wet is a little bit of a bummer because of all the vegetation. It gets wet, and then there's no choice but to just be completely soaked from head to toe. But I'm into some dry clothes. I've got camp set up, dinner's in me, and I'm settling in for a relaxing evening. That'll be the end of day 3. Good night. Good morning. Made it to day 4. My backpacking adventure in Glacier National Park. The rain seemed to have stopped throughout the night, but now a big fog cloud has moved through, and everything is still very, very wet. I'm sure as I begin hiking, I will be very, very wet as well due to the vegetation. Comfortable temperature stayed a couple degrees above 50. Today will be an interesting day because although my beginning campsite and ending campsite are at nearly identical elevations, I'll have a 2,500 foot climb and descent in between them. I'll also start out the day with a ford of the creek, and I'll end the day with a ford of the creek. So some fun, interesting obstacles to overcome along the way. The first of those will be to pack up a wet tent. After that, it'll be time to hit the trail. Immediately out of camp, I've got a cold water ford of Park Creek, and I'm doing this in my camp shoes, but it doesn't really matter because my boots are absolutely soaking wet still, and I'm sure they will only get wetter throughout the day as I walk through all the dripping vegetation. But it's just a matter of habit, I guess, to do a crossing in the water shoes, and so that's what I'm doing. I'll get through this second channel and then should be back on the dry land. And there's a hidden third channel to cross as well. Park Creek is a sneaky one. Here we go. Into the soaking wet jungle. There's some interesting gray mushrooms growing out of this old gray sket. I've climbed up around 1,000 feet or a little more to start the day, and out to the west we can see Rampage Mountain. It's a beautiful day in the sky. It's a very wet day down in the brush. Looks like I'm going to drop down, and I'm sure rise up again shortly after. A little wet foot crossing. Good thing I don't have to worry about changing out of my boots. They can't get any wetter than they are now. Looking back the way I've been hiking, you can't see a trail because it's hidden in the brush, but we can see Riverview Mountain towering. Just finished off what I hope to be my last major climb of the day, and as I start to drop into the Coal Creek drainage, there is an impressive array of peaks dead ahead. This is about the 10th scat I've seen today, and this bear was getting into some bright green berries. These are the Cloudcroft Peaks, of which Mount Duty to the right is the most prominent. I believe that my camp is going to be right down there where Elk Creek comes out of the Dunwoody Basin. Dropping down, closing in. Made it down to Coal Creek, and as promised this morning, my day started with a ford and it is ending with one. Actually, the water on Coal Creek is not that cold. It was a little deep back there, and now I'm up to the shallow spot. A little bit of sun poking through. That's a nice change. I should be just rolling over to the other side of the river here and then finding the Coal Creek campground. A surprise ford, this time of Elk Creek. Ooh. But right on the other side is home sweet home, the Coal Creek campground. Which is actually not on Coal Creek, it's on Elk Creek. The Coal Creek campground, food prep and food hang. There's a ton of stuff here, a bunch of big heavy boxes. Somebody's stronger than I am. Or some horses are. This'll be me. A nice little tent site to get set up on.
Coal Creek got its name from the presence of small amounts of coal near the creek mouth. The Kootenai called this waterway Bull Robe.
I'm hoping that my tent will dry out by bedtime. It's currently quite wet, but I've got a couple hours, so I'll let it do its thing while I get myself dry. Let's take a look at the map for day 4. From the Park Creek campsite, I came up and over and down the Fielding Trail into the Coal Creek drainage to the Coal Creek campsite. Day 4 was about 9 miles. Day 4 has been a challenging day. The combination of the brush and the wet made for a difficult day of hiking, and it was not a fun time throughout a lot of it, but to earn that view coming over the last ridge from Park into Coal Creek was incredible, and it's turning into a beautiful evening with hopefully good weather continued on the horizon for the next couple days. Camp set up, I've got dinner in me, and that'll be the end of day 4. Good night. Good morning. Made it to day 5, my backpacking Glacier. The mystery of all the boxes in camp was solved. There's a trail crew here at Coal Creek. 2 nice guys, Trevor and Stuart, out here taking care of the land so that myself and many others get to come recreate in it. Thank you guys for the hard work. Today, I'm heading up towards Beaver Woman Lake in Martha's Basin. I think the big challenge today, similar to yesterday, will be the wetness. A little different today in that hopefully the vegetation just has a little condensation this morning. Maybe it'll be off by midday, afternoon. But I also have multiple fords of Coal Creek, so the feet are pretty certain to stay wet throughout the day. The first rays of sunlight are hitting camp. I'm gonna get packed up and it'll be time to hit the trail. Just like yesterday, I'm going to do my initial ford in my camp shoes. And just like yesterday, it does not matter because my shoes are still wet and they're only going to get wetter. My boots, that is. If the trail remains this clear for the entirety of the day, I'll be ecstatic. The Coal Creek drainage is starting off absolutely beautiful. I'm excited to explore up its length today. Last night was the coldest night of the trip, dropped down into upper 40s, which is still very, very comfortable. And it is appearing to be a nice, mostly sunny day to get things kicked off today. The Coal Creek drainage is off to a beautiful start for me. I'm excited to explore up into its reaches today. The weather is looking very nice. It was the coldest night of the trip last night, upper 40s, but still very comfortable. And it's turned into a mostly sunny day. After the clouds of the past few days, it's a welcome change. A morass below the peak of Mount St. Nicholas. What a difference a day makes. What about all the effort a day takes? The snake was coming right at me, trying to attack me. Now he finally turned around and is heading the other way. He's black and yellow with some red stripes. He's a pretty fella. I believe there are only 3 species of reptile in Glacier National Park. Well, I'm not totally out of the woods. I still got some brush to brush through today. But this would be a pretty nice stretch of yesterday's trail, so I'm certainly not complaining. As I make my way up the Coal Creek drainage, the scenery continues to develop. Off to the left there are the Cloudcroft Peaks, and as we work around to the right, we'll see Caper Peak, and in a little bit we'll see Vigil Peak. And for those who have been paying attention, you'll remember Caper Peak and Vigil Peak surrounded Lake Isabel. So although I've come about 25 miles, Lake Isabel is less than 3 miles to the east as the crow flies. My first ford of Coal Creek on the day. It's definitely gonna be a wet footer. I felt like my boots are drying out a little bit, but they're still so wet that I'll just go through in them, figure it out on the back end. Second ford of Coal Creek. I'm taking it on. Ooh, these rocks are slippery. Gotta be careful. The first half of my day was relatively flat and chill. The second half will contain a fair amount of climbing as I make my way up into Martha's Basin and eventually to the Beaver Woman Lake campground. Looming ahead is Mount Phillips. I'm gonna skirt around the base to the west, to the left. Here we go. My third wet foot crossing of Coal Creek. Don't worry, doctor. I'm still getting my daily dose of bushwhacking in. You never have to worry about that in Glacier. I just popped into a completely different ecosystem. This is a nice old forest that has not burned as recently as the rest of the drainage. And it's pretty here. First look at Mount Pinchot. I'm not sure of the pronunciation, but it forms the northern wall of Martha's Basin. Hopping off the Coal Creek Trail for today and joining on the Martha's Basin Trail, take me up to Beaver Woman Lake. I've got a couple miles and 500, 1,000 feet of elevation gain left. Let's take the detour out to Buffalo Woman Lake before heading into camp at Beaver Woman Lake. Buffalo Woman Lake! I hope that Beaver Woman Lake is less windy. Look at those waterfalls coming down the cliff dead ahead. That's awesome. Alright, I explored the left fork of Martha's Basin Trail. Now, just a hair under 1 mile to home. Beaver Woman Lake. Fortunately for me, it is less windy than Buffalo Woman Lake. A little breeze, comfortable. There are some awesome cascades tumbling down Mount Pinchot into the lake. Home sweet home. This is the Beaver Woman Lake food prep area. The food hang is a little ways away. So I'll go pick out a campsite, get set up, start to enjoy this beautiful afternoon. This is the site for me. It's the farthest site. It's the smallest, but it also comes with a big waterfall view. Plenty of space for me. I'll take it.
The exact origins of Beaver Woman, Buffalo Woman, and Martha's Basin are unknown, but they are all government-approved names that have withstood the test of time.
Tent is pitched and drying out. Next up on my camp chores list will be to gather some water and then change out of these wet boots. And then RELAX. Let's take a look at the map for day 5. From the Coal Creek campsite, I followed the Coal Creek Trail up into Martha's Basin, checked out Buffalo Woman Lake, and then set up camp at Beaver Woman Lake. Day 5 was about 12 miles. Day 5 in Glacier has been a great day. Much more enjoyable hiking than yesterday, with some killer mountain views along the way, culminating in the 2 lakes in Martha's Basin. A brief rain shower rolled through right as I finished dinner. The first drops escorted me from the food prep area back to the food hang, but it seems to have passed, and I'm hopeful that there'll be no more rain tonight or tomorrow. Camp set up, I've got dinner in me, and I'm settling in for a relaxing evening. That'll be the end of day 5. Good night. Good morning. Made it to day 6 in Glacier. Last night was the coldest night of the trip and the coldest night that I've ever spent in Glacier so far. Dropped down to right around 40. Still very much in the range of comfort. I haven't seen very many people on this trip, but I've been getting absolutely spoiled with my campmates. 2 nights ago was the trail crew. Last night was a wilderness ranger. I've got a nice day today. Probably some brush, probably some wetness. We'll see. I'm gonna change clothes, get camp packed up, and it'll be time to hit the trail. The first mile and a half of my day was retracing my steps out of Martha's Basin back to the Coal Creek intersection. I'm now hopping on the Surprise Pass trail to head up and over Surprise Pass. The storm last night did not last long, but it has had a long-lasting impact. All the vegetation is soaking wet. This is actually a pretty nice little patch here with only low vegetation. But the Surprise Pass trail has been vegetation up to the head for a big portion of it. So it will be another soaking wet day for me today. Just to prove my point, looks to me like a bear track. He must have came through after the rain last night. Popped out to a very different ecosystem than I've been walking through for most of the day. It's quite open out here. Obviously it's an old burned forest. Just hasn't grown up the same way some of the other ones has. It's pretty brushy, but isn't too bad on the brushy scale, not as bad as this morning. It's a pretty day in terms of weather. Just enjoyed a pleasant lunch right before this wet foot crossing of Nyack Creek. Ooh, it's a little deep here in the middle, up to the knees, sneaky deep. It's flowing nice and slow, not a difficult crossing. The lunch gave me fuel for the second half of my day, and I'm hopeful that it'll be less brushy than the first, and maybe I can make some good time to camp. You know that I've been going through it when I see this as a nice clear stretch of trail, easy going. It has been some incredibly brushy trails over the next few days, and I'm not out of the woods yet, but maybe only about 2 more days left of brushy trails, and then my last day and a half should be a little better back into Medicine. A pretty little crossing of Nyack. Looks like it'll be a dry foot one. Not that it matters. A good look at the backsides of Mount Pinchot to the left and Mount Stimson to the right. 2.6 miles to camp. I'll be coming back to this intersection tomorrow to make my way up the Cut Bank Pass trail, but for today, I'm continuing along the Nyack Creek trail. Some neat glacier action that was previously hidden on the side of Mount Stimson. Pacific Creek spews this awesome falls down into this tight slot canyon. And this is the canyon looking downstream from the falls. And there are the falls looking upstream through the slot canyon. The Upper Nyack cabin, quite a scenic location here for it. And this means that I'm just over a mile from home for the day. It'll be a well-earned rest once I make it to the Upper Nyack campground. Nyack Creek is a really beautiful waterway through here. It's carved a nice deep canyon. Got some tumbling small falls that roll down into deep pools. Very pretty. In what can only be described as an extremely fortunate set of circumstance, this Nyack Creek trail is by far the nicest that I've been on in the entire Walton area. It's an actual trail, nice and maintained, not too brushy. This is so fortunate because I have to do this stretch twice. Once today to head to the Upper Nyack campground, and once tomorrow morning to head back to the Cut Bank intersection. Home sweet home. Made it to the Upper Nyack campground. I'm at the food prep and food hang area. I like when they're together. I'm gonna hang my food, find a tent site, get set up, and get into some dry shoes. This'll be the site for me. It looked like it had the most comfortable ground of the three. I went ahead and set my ground cloth out so it could dry.
The name Nyack is believed to come from Delaware guides, meaning point or corner.
Tent pitched and drying out. Next up on my chores list, head down to the creek, gather some water, and start to soak my poor, lacerated, beaten up legs in Nyack Creek. I'll readily admit the irony is not lost on me. I've been whining about wet feet for the past 4 days, and the first thing I do is come plop my feet right back down in the water. But this is a different wet. This is a good wet, a healing wet. Let's take a look at the map for day 6. From Beaver Woman Lake, I exited Martha's Basin, took the Surprise Pass Trail over Surprise Pass to connect with the Nyack Creek Trail to the Upper Nyack campsite. Day 6 was about 10 miles.
Day 6 in Glacier turned out to be a great day. The first half was not great. It was looking like another long, wet, bushwhacking slog, but it cleared up in the second half of the day. Some really cool mountain and glacier views, as well as popping into Nyack Creek, which has been one of my favorite areas of the trip so far. Pacific Falls and that little slot canyon was a nice cherry on top. Camp set up, I've got dinner in me, and I'm settling in for a relaxing evening. I'll need my rest because tomorrow is a big day. That'll be the end of day 6. Good night.
Good morning. Made it to day 7 of my backpacking adventure in Glacier National Park. Last night was about 10 degrees warmer than the night before, but I did have a rainstorm come through overnight, which means that all the vegetation is now reloaded with wetness, and it will be another wet hiking day for me, the 5th wet hiking day in a row. It's also the longest hiking day of the trip. I have about 13 to 14 miles to cover, including nearly 5,000 feet of elevation gain as I make my way up to Cut Bank Pass and Dawson Pass, and then drop down from the Walton area back into the Two Medicine area. So it is a day that certainly has a handful of challenges ahead. Hopefully I can keep a positive attitude. Maybe towards the afternoon time I'll start to dry out a little bit. We'll see how that goes. I'm gonna get camp packed up and be time to hit the trail. Starting out as a mostly sunny day, but there are quite a few low fog banks here around the Nyack drainage. Finished off the first 2.5 miles, retracing my steps back to the Cut Bank intersection. The next 5 or so miles may very well be the most difficult of my trip. In that time, I've got to rise about 3,000 feet, and if the trail is brushy, it's going to be a tough time. We'll see how things go. The trail conditions have degraded and it's gotten a little brushy again, but I can make pretty good time through this brush. It's all leafy, it's not too high. So far so good. It's a steep little stretch here, but I'm making my way up, cutting through the brush, cutting through the climbs, enjoying the pretty day. The Cut Bank Pass trail has become barely perceptible along this climb. I never feel like I'm losing it. It just requires a little bit of extra attention to follow. I am making progress. Still got some climb to go. I've got Cut Bank Pass in my sights. This has been a stout climb. Not over for me yet, and even past CBP, I'll have some more climbing later in the day as well. Here, bear, 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 bear. Here, bear, 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 bear. This little shelf that I've been climbing through on my way up to the pass is a super cool little ecosystem. I like to experience different environments, and I've been through quite a few just today as I climbed up from Nyack Creek and making my way up to the pass. I'm above 7,000 feet now, and as we look around this drainage I've climbed up, which is a tributary of Nyack Creek, dead ahead is Razor Edge Mountain. Off in the distance we can kind of see Mount Stimson and Mount Pinchot. They're hidden by the clouds, and the big peak to the left middle is Tinkham Mountain. Looking out into the other side, unfortunately, it started to rain. Obviously, there's been some big gray clouds for most of the day. This is the worst stretch of my trip for rain to come in, because for the next several miles, I'm on this very tight, very exposed, goat-like trail. So hopefully, the rain doesn't turn into a storm, or conditions could get a little dangerous. Hopefully it'll just fizzle out. I've made it to Cut Bank Pass, finally. Now I've got to make it to Dawson Pass, and then I can start to drop down to my campsite at No Name Lake. A little windy up here, a little cold. The rain might come back. I need to get a move on. Massive, monstrous views looking out into the Walton area. I'm under a big blue patch of sky right now. That could change at any moment. This trail roughly follows the Continental Divide to Dawson Pass. Looking down into the Nyack Lakes and the headwaters of Nyack Creek. Old Man Lake on the Two Medicine side of the divide. Now that I'm getting back into the Two Medicine area, I'm starting to see some people. Since I broke into Walton halfway through day 2, now I'm exiting halfway through day 7, 5 full days. I saw 3 backpackers on trail, 1 backpacker in camp, so a total of 4 recreators over 5 days, and then 3 park employees, 2 trail crew and 1 wilderness ranger. So there are definitely places you can find solitude, even in an area as popular as Glacier National Park. You just gotta walk through a little brush to find it. Dawson Pass is Should be mostly downhill from here into Two Medicine. Looking down on No Name Lake, my destination for the day, and the head of Two Medicine Lake, my ultimate destination for the trip. Down on the shores of No Name Lake. Just when I thought this was a great day that couldn't go wrong, a day hiker walked by wearing a Duke shirt. Gross. Go Heels. Home sweet home. No Name Lake Campground, food prep, and food hang. I do see another set of campers down here. They must have set up before hanging their food. That's a no-no. This'll be the site for me.
The Medicine Lodge was an important ritual for the Blackfeet in Glacier. One year, 2 separate medicine lodges were built in this valley, hence the name Two Medicine.
Tent is pitched and drying out. Now it's time for me to dry my feet out, settle in for my pre-dinner rest. Let's take a look at the map for day 7. From the upper Nyack campsite, I retraced my steps to connect with the Cut Bank Pass trail, up and over Cut Bank Pass to Pitamakan Pass, and then along to Dawson Pass, and then down to No Name Lake. Day 7 was about 14 miles.
Day 7, the penultimate day of my trip in Glacier, has been a great day. I knew that the hiking would be challenging, and it was, but today did not take the toughest day crown away from day number 4 in between Park Creek and Coal Creek, even though that day was 5 miles less and several thousand feet of elevation change less. The brush and the wetness made it the most difficult day of the trip. But the highlights for today were the awesome scenery, really the best scenery of the trip, incredible views between some of the passes and looking down into the drainages and the lakes. It has continued to rain off and on throughout the afternoon and evening. I've got camp set up, dinner's in me, and that'll be the end of day 7. Good night.
Good morning. Made to day 8, the final day of my adventure in Glacier National Park. The lows last night dropped to around 40, tied for the coldest of the trip. I've been running an experiment to see if I could get through an 8-day adventure with one small fuel canister, and after 20 boils of 8 to 10 ounces, I've still got a little bit left in the tank, so the experiment was a success. I've got about 5 miles to hike out today back to Two Medicine, and that'll be the end of it for me. I'm going to get camp packed up, and it's time to hit the trail. Two Medicine Lake on a brilliant sunny day. Peering out from the north shore across Two Medicine Lake. The waters are calm this morning. A peaceful day. Eight days trekking a southern loop in Glacier National Park, done and dusted. I really enjoyed getting to explore 3 distinct and different drainages, Park, Coal, and Nyack, as well as 3 awesome passes, Two Medicine, Cut Bank, and Dawson. And I also thought it was very cool to be able to get those 5 days of near solitude in the Walton area, despite the popularity of Glacier as a park. It's time for me to go get a shower, get some real food, and maybe try to get some more permits in Glacier. Until next time, thanks for tuning into Lane's World. Goodbye. Let's take a look at the map for day 8. From No Name Lake, I followed the Dawson Pass North Shore Trail out to the 2 Med campground. Day 8 was about 5 miles for a trip total of approximately 75 miles.